Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather has, joined the exhibition circuit, if you will. We saw the success of Tyson and Roy Jones. We saw that success, over 1 million pay-per-view buys. And I'm looking and hearing about Errol Spence and Danny Garcia, and they've done possibly around 250,000. So these are two fairly elite guys in the sport of boxing, and they can't do as much as Mike Tyson and Roy Jones, who are way past their prime. So that's troubling. That's an issue. That's a situation that we need to look at. Boxing might have a problem. And the reality of it is, and I said this earlier this week on the Chris Williams podcast. Make sure you check that out. iTunes there. So check it out. But I said this earlier this week. Look, if the big three is outrating the NBA has a problem. So if Tyson-Jones is getting more pay-per-view buys than Spence Garcia, boxing has a problem. They have a problem. And they have to figure this problem out. Now, boxing isn't going anywhere. The sport has a lot of warts. The sport has a lot of issues. The sport has a lot of problems. But it isn't going anywhere. When the event is big and Mayweather Pacquiao, it was Super Bowl-esque. Everybody and their mama watched it, whether you paid for it on your own or whether you went to somebody's house, and whether you went to the movie theater or maybe you went to a bar. But everybody was watching. It was the talk of the town. It was the talk of the sports world. That was the talk of the sports world. So when they do it big, right? Tyson-Jones. I know they're retired guys, and I know they're 50-year-old guys. But, again, people were talking about it. It was the talk of the night. It was the talk of the night. And, now you got Mayweather and Logan Paul. And it's a fight, exhibition fight. I mean, Floyd Mayweather, we always want to see Floyd in the ring. And Logan Paul, who's a YouTube sensation, who the kids love. He's popular. The Paul brothers, they, as crazy and maybe even as sad as it sounds, the Paul brothers could be the cash cow of the sport of boxing. Those two guys could be the cash cow of the sport. Logan and Jake Paul could be the cash cows of boxing. Guys who aren't really boxers easily could be the cash cow of the sport. And that's, dare I say, an issue. That's an issue. It's an issue, right? It's an issue. And boxing has a problem. And it could be a situation where, like, if you're Tank Davis, right, and you have an opportunity to fight Logan Paul or Jake Paul, and with minimal risk, you have an opportunity to fight the Paul brothers with minimal risk, you're probably going to take that fight. You're probably going to take that fight. So let's look at, we look at Logan Paul. I mean, 5.8 million followers on Twitter. He's popular. People care about Logan Paul. Let's look at Floyd Mayweather and his Twitter account. How many followers does Floyd Mayweather have? 7.9. So this is the GOAT, one of maybe the most popular boxer in this era of boxing, and he has 7.9 million. Logan Paul has 5.8. What about Jake Paul? Let's look at Jake Paul and how many followers he has on Twitter. I mean, these guys, people care about the Paul brothers, right? They care about the Paul brothers. They care about what they bring to the table. People care. All right? Jake has 3.8 million followers. So Floyd has 5.8. Logan has 5.8. Jake has 3.8. Floyd has 7.9. But let's look at other people in the sport of boxing, right? Errol Spence, maybe arguably one of the best in the sport, just made his return against Danny Garcia, which we'll talk about in the next few minutes. But Errol Spence Jr., 188,000 followers. Now, it's clear that when you look at Jake Paul, Logan Paul, these guys, the name, they ring bells. And these kids, this YouTube generation, they care a lot about these guys. They want to see these guys, right? You could argue that Jake Paul stole the show in the Tyson-Jones undercard. He stole the show. I mean, even, because we've seen memes of Nate Robinson everywhere. There's a meme of Nate Robinson each and every place you go, planking, right? Nate on his face. So, and that stole the show. That was popular. People cared about that. People made fun of Nate Robinson for months. Well, not months, weeks, I should say. And people still, they're probably going to keep making fun of him for months. So the thing is, obviously Mayweather and Logan Paul is not a real fight. It's an exhibition fight. But it's a fight that I think people are going to care about. At this point, it's priced at $25. Now, they did say if it gets to 1 million pay-per-view buys by the time the fight starts or whatnot, the price is going to go up. So it's priced appropriately at this point, $25. Now, if you don't buy it now, it could go up to as much as $70. So at this point, it's priced appropriately. You got two guys who are very popular. Mayweather, obviously, the most popular boxer in this era. And then Logan Paul, one of the more popular people in terms of YouTube, in terms of the YouTube generation. Just in general, Logan Paul is popular. So you put those two guys together, there's a good chance it could do huge numbers, especially at that price point. And here's the thing with boxing. I mean, $75 it took to watch Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia. It's a lot of money. That's not cheap, right? And you consider a pandemic, you consider an economic downturn, you consider all those different things. Well, that is an issue. And I think boxing could have an issue. Boxing could have a problem. Boxing has to find a way, and it's a niche sport, but they have to find a way to get their stars out here, right? Boxing in its heyday in the 80s, 70s, they were on TV, primetime TV, people watching boxing. What was it, 93 million watch Muhammad Ali and Leon Spinks? Saw that number out there? I mean, that's a lot of people. It was on ABC. That's a lot of people, right? And so boxing has to find a way to get back into the conscience of the public. It's a situation now where you might see Ryan Garcia against Jake Paul. You might see Tank Davis against Logan Paul. You might see guys who say, you know what? Am I going to fight this dude for this amount of money when I can fight a Paul brother for this amount of money with minimal risk and less chance of me getting hurt? That's a question these guys have to ask themselves. And if the answer is, you know what? I'm in this thing. This is prize fighting. I'm in this thing to make money. I might as well cash out and make as much money as I can and fight one of these Paul guys, right? Let me get my paper. And then maybe I'll fight a tough fight. If you're Ryan Garcia, let me get my paper with a Logan Paul. Heck, and if after I beat Logan, let me get Jake as well. Let me get some paper with these guys. Let me get my money up. And then I'll fight Gervonta Tank Davis. Or maybe I'll fight Devin Haney at that point. Maybe I'll fight Teofimo Lopez at that point. But let me get my money first. Because, we go out and we say, well, it's about legacy. And, your name being in the rafters somewhere, your name being in somebody's Hall of Fame somewhere. That stuff is cool and important, but what is that stuff if you're broke, right? What is that stuff if you don't have money, you can't feed yourself? What is that stuff when you have no faculties, when you don't have all your faculties and you're all messed up? It doesn't mean as much, right? So if you have the money and a little bit of legacy, right, you're good. And your faculties to boot, you're good. So if you got your faculties, you can enjoy your money. You can enjoy your money. You can enjoy life. If you don't have your faculties and you don't have no money, that's a double negative, right? But if you have your faculties and you have some few dollars in your pocket, that's a double positive. That's a good situation. So if you're these guys, you have to think about that. And you have to say, can I get in with this dude with minimal risk? Because this is the hurt game. This is the hurt business. And the body only can take so many punches. The face can only take so many punches before, something happens. So it's imperative that these guys get the money, as much money as they can for now. And then with the hope, that, as they go forward, as they get done with the sport, that their faculties are intact and their money is in their pocket and everything is good. But it's not always the case in a sport of boxing. We as fans want, all the big fights. Obviously, I don't want to see Ryan Garcia fight Logan or Jake Paul. I want to see him fight Gervonta Tank Davis. Obviously, I don't want to see Teofimo Lopez fight a Logan or Jake Paul. I want to see him fighting Devin Haney or Ryan Garcia or Tank Davis. That's the fights I want to see. But it's not about what I want to see. It's about what makes the most money, what makes the most financial sense for these guys. And that's something they have to determine. But to me, fighting a Paul brother with minimal risk and still getting paid what you would get paid if you fought Gervonta Davis or Teofimo Lopez or any of those fighters, to me, it makes perfect sense. Get your paper. Because, championship, like I said, winning championships is good, winning rings is good, in all these different sports. But if you have no money, what does it mean? It means nothing. You're just broke. You're just a broke legend. And I don't think that's much. I don't think that's great.